The labor market changes each day. So, for example, the car industry. From mechanical engineers, they are more or less looking for software engineers now. Totally different skills. How can we bridge this from today into tomorrow? Today I'm gonna visit a startup. They exactly focus on that problem and they use AI to provide solutions to bring the labor market into the future. Come on! SkyHive, unleashing human potential. I'm curious. Come on, let's go in. Hey, I'm Jürgen. Hi, nice to meet you. Today I meet the CEO and founder of SkyHive, Jean. What's the idea behind your company?
So SkyHive was established in 2017 and we have one objective and one objective only, which is to reskill the world. And so we know that the world is going through drastic change as a result of globalization, increased digitization, and people are struggling to keep up with that pace of change. And so SkyHive was established to help the world, which includes companies, communities, governments, and individuals.
Which challenges do you face?
Outside of climate change, reskilling of the world is like literally the second most important issue facing humanity. If you look at any of the thought leaders in the world, the OECD or the World Economic Forum, they've all been very clear that, you know, over these next decades, this decade and into following decades, we are going to see some of the most dramatic shifts in economies that we've seen in probably over 100 years. What this means is, and the World Economic Forum put it really well, skills are the new currency of the global workforce. It's no longer about job titles or, you know, degrees. It's about what skills are becoming necessary in companies, communities, and therefore with individuals, and how do you apply those skills to a world now where the relationship between human and machines is growing, and machines are taking on a lot more of the roles that humans have traditionally played with respect to economic growth and productivity. And so how do we help the world understand, whether it's educational institutions that need to build training for people to learn new skills, or whether it's for individuals who are struggling to understand what skills do I have and how do those skills relate to the emerging and changing jobs of the current and short-term future. These are all the questions that are faced in this issue that the world is faced with, which is reskilling of the planet. And if we don't do it right, we're going to see increased gaps with respect to the haves and the have-nots, a growing gap between the rich and poor, growing inequality between, you know, certain groups within communities and others. For example, today in the world, we see that youth unemployment, that is for people under 25 years old who are in the labor market, is the highest it's ever been. And we all have stories within our families and our networks where young people are living with their parents much longer, you know, into their 30s, or they're not getting married and they're not having children. All of these issues, the underlying issue is, you know, the increase to economic opportunity. And so this is why it's such a challenge in the world and why we need to solve this as a planet.
So you have a B corporation company, but it's on a full profit based. How can this work?
That's right. So there's an organization called B Corp, and this is an organization that was formed to quantify the development of a social enterprise. And a B Corp, these are for-profit companies. So SkyHive is a for-profit social impact organization. And B Corp is the standard that the world is seemingly adopting that certifies and regulates what a B Corp or a social impact organization is. So the reason why SkyHive decided to become a B Corp is very similar to a regulation like an ISO standard, where the practices that companies need to follow and be audited on, whether it's diversity, equality, and inclusion, belonging, or whether it's the ESG standards. What B Corp does is it sets the framework for organizations, whether it's through governance, whether it's through the purchasing that they're making, the partners that they're working with, the way that they develop their products, that ensures that companies are measured on everything that they do with respect to impact, positive impact to society. So increasingly, more and more companies are becoming B corporations. And this is, the way I like to define it is it's the modern way that businesses are being developed, where companies should be built for profit, but companies can now also be built for profit and societal good. And so that's why SkyHive became and continues to be a B corporation.
So you see your company as a role model for the upcoming economy?
Yes, as an entrepreneur, it was very important to me to build a company that could be hugely successful from a traditional profit perspective, but drive true positive impact in tandem. And in 2017, when I formed the company, this wasn't common. So it was actually very difficult to build a company that inherently is good, but is inherently, great in terms of traditional growth and profit and revenue. It sounds a lot easier than it is to actually build a company like this, because it's not a corporate social responsibility initiative where it's on the side of a desk, or it's not, charitable donations or foundations. In everything we do, whether it's product design, technology design, the way that we hire people, the way that we scale the business, all of this is inherent in our DNA, is positive social impact.
You started in 2017 and also using the technology of AI. Who defines ethical AI?
This is a very big question, ethical AI, because now with the introduction of ChatGPT, consumers are now beginning to understand artificial intelligence. See, before, those of us in the AI community, this is not new. For a decade, we've known that this technology exists and is getting better and is coming. But with ChatGPT, what it means is, maybe the local mailman understands AI, or the person who works at the local petrol station understands AI. And so that means that the consumer knowledge of artificial intelligence has become far greater than it was even just 5 or 6 months ago. Now becomes the question of the ethics in the use of artificial intelligence. And there's always been this, obviously, natural hesitancy or fear that an artificial intelligence system can be served as some sort of threat to human beings. Now, we know with any technology and innovation that 99% of the world is going to use it for good. And if we look back in the last 100 years, where we've really seen a lot of the planet's innovation, less children are dying, people are eating better foods, there's more access to medicine, there's more access to clean water. So at a high level, at a macro level, the world is in a far greater place as a result of innovation than it was 100 years ago. But there's always 1%. There's always 1% of humanity that will use technology and innovation for bad or nefarious reasons.
How can we eliminate that?
Right. So how we eliminate that through really the focus on ethical AI, and when the way that I like to explain ethical AI, because we have a long track record of being thought leaders, SkyHive are thought leaders in ethical AI. And the way that I like to explain this is, when it comes to ethics, there's what you say you're going to do, and then there's doing it. And these are two buckets. So in terms of what you say you're going to do in ethical AI, this is the development of policies, systems, and processes. In other words, documents that say, we are going to practice these things in our intention to be ethical in the development of technology. And a lot of the world is kind of focused on this bucket, what we say we're going to do. The real companies that understand ethical AI and will inevitably be successful as the growth of AI continues in the world are the companies that are doing ethical AI. And when I mean doing, it's about taking the things we say we're going to do and operationalizing it. So in the world of artificial intelligence, we have what's called machine learning operations. So when people are developing a website, or they're developing a homepage, or they're developing lines of code, you can embed ethics by design. And what ethics by design means is peer review. So just like universities or researchers have peer review process that we've adopted all over the world as the standard for ensuring quality, we apply the same thing in the development of code or algorithms or even design of technology, where I will finish a line of code, I will send it to someone to peer review purely through the lens of ethics. So is the model biased? Is the model hallucinating? Is the data that's coming into it, in any way, shape, or form biased? These are all things that are constantly going on in what we call machine learning operations. When you take the saying what we're going to do bucket and the actually doing it bucket, and those two things come together, that's when you have a very strong, robust system of ethical artificial intelligence that is transparent, it's explainable, it's what we call white box, glass box, where you can see how machines are making decisions, and you can see the logic that was applied to the machines making those decisions. And if it makes the wrong decision, which machines tend to do, then you can go in and actually train it to not make that decision again, that wrong decision again in the future.
Will that create new jobs like an external ethical AI compliance officer?
100%. And so a lot of the new jobs that are evolving in the world labor market are associated with these types of things. So we're seeing an explosion of jobs, whether it's based on query architects for generative AI systems or auditing roles for ethical AI regulations. So very similar to how finance has an entire industry of regulations and regulatory authorities and a lot of jobs that go into that, or even in another circumstance with green economy lead. And so you're getting a lot of certifications and regulation around renewable energy and the green economy. The same thing will exist with artificial intelligence. And so yes, definitely those skill sets are increasingly in demand, and definitely the jobs forming are in demand as well.
So you're working with a lot of data. Where do you get it from?
So SkyHive's an engine that is intended to what we call cognify the world labor economy. So instead of people having to manually research how jobs are changing or how training is evolving, we've built a massive technology with a deep technology that automates all of the inputs from what's happening in the world labor market, and then interprets those inputs into what are the skills in demand in communities, what are the skills gaps, how are new jobs forming, how are workforces evolving to adapt to what's actually required. And so part of this is obviously bringing in information and data. And so SkyHive brings in any information that's giving us an indication of changes in work, learning, or labor markets overall. So patent applications, annual reports, subject matter expertise, academic journals, job descriptions, CVs, resumes, course outlines, economic census data. And it's bringing this in from now over 200 countries in 86 core languages. And so all of this information is coming in on a real-time basis. It's being streamed from across the world. And these are all digital sources on the internet. So, when a new job is posted somewhere, or when a university publishes a new course, that's where SkyHive is capturing that information. Now, in terms of distinguishing how, because a lot of people will talk about, good data and bad data. So, what if we have good job descriptions in one country and bad job descriptions in an industry in another country? There's the distinction I would want your viewers to make is the difference between information and intelligence. So think of a machine or an AI system that very similar to a student. So us as students, whether we had a good teacher or a bad teacher for math, we're still required to learn math. And the teacher is the information, the input that we're bringing in. So in the AI context, it's data. It's the information that we're bringing in. But then it's our intelligence that gives us the ability to distinguish, is something good that I'm learning or something bad? And so in the intelligence that SkyHive has built, in other words, the artificial intelligence that looks at all of this data and makes decisions, we focus on the intelligence. So if bad data comes in, the AI has the ability to identify that bad data and look at other data as the benchmark for quality. And it's doing that in an automated way. So the best analogy I can give is the math example. Whether I have a good math teacher or a bad math teacher, at the end of the day...
Did you have a good one?
I had a good one, yeah. Fortunately, I had a good one. But at the end of the day, whether we have a good teacher or a bad teacher, we still have to pass the math test, and there is only one answer.
Can you give me a concrete example how SkyHive can be used?
The intention of SkyHive's technology is to help transition the world from job-based to skill-based. And so we work with companies, communities, and countries to help them move from job-based to skill-based and using our technology to do that. So here's a great example. We worked with a defense agency, a Department of Defense for a country, and they had an interest in increasing the recruitment of women into the defense agency. And they had a target of 10% year-over-year improvement to these numbers, and they were not achieving their targets. So they came to us and said, can you use your technology to help us increase the recruitment of women? So what we did was we used our technology and we took all of their jobs within the military, and there were 207 job families, and we automated all of the extraction to skills. So instead of job titles, skills. And then we use the technology to go outside to the whole country and look at civilian jobs through the same lens of skills, and then provide a high correlation match to military roles to public roles. And as an example, which is a real one, a yoga instructor is a high match to 6 jobs within the military. They wouldn't have known that because they were never looking at jobs through the lens of skills. And the military wouldn't have known that because they were never looking at candidates through the lens of skills. Now, that in the case of that yoga instructor, they may not be a 100% match. And this is the problem with traditional job title-based matching. I either am a project manager or I'm not a project manager. It's either yes or no. It's a zero-sum game, right? In the case of skills, well, I might have an 85% match to the skill sets that are required. So I'm a yoga instructor, I may have an 85% match, and I can immediately see the gap to get the other 15% I need in order to take the job. And then the employer's responsibility, in this case the defense agency, is to say, am I willing to invest the training to bridge that 15% gap to bring this talent in, or am I willing to keep not hitting my targets of increasing the recruitment of women? So this opens up an entirely new conversation in human resources, which is, what is the adjacent talent or hidden talent that exists in my candidate pool that I wouldn't have known existed because I was only looking at them through the lens of job titles? And how can I increase my awareness of training in relation to the cost of not having a person, and balance those two things? And that's really what our technology helps, at least in the context of an enterprise or a company, understand. For the individual, we all have a unique skill DNA. So we have a DNA of skills that has been acquired based on our work experience, life experience, and educational experience. And everybody has a unique DNA because we've all come from different places. So I'll give an example. I have twin sons, 8-year-old boys. They've grown up in the exact same environment. They do the exact same things. They sleep in the exact, sleep in their twin room. They go to the same school. They have access to the same devices. One loves basketball. One loves hockey. One loves painting. One loves music. One loves reading. One loves recording. So, same environment, totally different skill sets that are forming, unique skill DNA. So how do we help people best understand, based on work experience, life experience, educational experience, their unique skill DNA? And then how do we, as quickly as possible, help them see how their skill DNA matches with any career pathway for any job? So we now know, because of SkyHive's technology, that in the world there are 130 million career pathways. All the different jobs you can be taking in all the different directions. There are 130 million, give or take, right now. And we can identify a person's skill DNA to every single one of those pathways. And maybe they're a 2% match, maybe they're a 50% match, maybe they're a 100% match. And what I'm describing here are the mechanics of how we actually go about, as a planet, reskilling all 8 billion people to the future requirements of what the world needs and with respect to human capability.
Which outlook would you give for the digital labor market?
In the world, we have had physical labor markets where people can, there's an employer that needs an employee, and somebody in that community applies for a job, and that's how we have traditionally understood labor markets. But obviously, in the last 20 years, with the proliferation of technology and the internet, human connectivity has begun to create what we call a digital labor economy. And the digital labor economy can be defined as the provision of goods and services and the purchase of goods and services in a purely digital environment. In other words, I don't need to meet somebody, I don't need to look at something, I don't need to physically be present, and that person doesn't need to be there in order to provide that to me. So prior to COVID, it was estimated that this digital labor market will be approximately 6.5 trillion US dollars in terms of GDP growth by 2025. Just to understand the size of that, this would make it the 6th largest economy in the world. But because of the pandemic, we obviously understand there's a big acceleration now to remote work, distributed work, and hybrid work. So that 6.5 trillion is probably now something more like 8 trillion or 8.5 trillion in terms of GDP growth, which will now make it one of the primary economies of the world. That's one element. The other element is, today, about 67% of the world's population has access to the internet. Now, to put that into context, when I started SkyHive, it was less than 50%. It was 47%, 48% when I started SkyHive. Only 5 years later, that's gone from 47%, 48% to 67%. And by 2030, the entire world's population, all 8 billion people, will have the ability to access the internet. They may not all be able to, because they might not be able to afford hardware, or there's other issues, but the world will be able to see this. The majority of the people who will be impacted by this, in other words, the remaining 33% of the world's population that hasn't yet joined the internet, most of them live in areas where they don't have a physical labor market, right? If you're in a rural area in Nigeria or Ghana, you don't have access to go find a job. So the place you can turn now, moving forward, is the digital labor market, where you can use connectivity, you can teach yourself online and learn how to participate in that digital labor economy. And so we see this already with people who are doing data labeling and design. We've all probably used a freelancer online to do something for us, and this will only continue. So this represents the first time in humanity's history where we have an opportunity to bring abundance to the entire planet. It's the first time. It's never been available before, where someone who otherwise wouldn't be able to earn a living can earn a living. And this is all going to happen in this decade. So we understand, like when we look to the future, we can obviously see things like the increasing relationship between human and machine as being a threat. But going back to my point earlier in the discussion on 100 years ago to where we are now, we have an incredible opportunity for abundance and to bring to bring positivity and productivity to the world and connect people. And it's really up to us as human beings as to whether or not we want to take that responsibility. It's going to happen either way. It's either going to be positive or negative. But humanity is evolving to this direction. Do we use this opportunity to bring abundance to the rest of the world? Or do we use this opportunity to keep it for a few people in the world and then contribute to an increasing digital divide, data divide, and what is becoming an intelligence divide? We don't have to go that way. We and companies like SkyHive and that are B corporations and want to be building and harnessing technology for the good of humanity. Hopefully the example's been set, and we can see thousands more new technologies, new companies, and passionate entrepreneurs join to really drive a future of abundance.
Thank you for the interview.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for having me.